darts has never been so good. That's a narrative we're being told on a regular basis. The standard is through the roof. The standard is exceptional. The standard's never been matched like this. This is a different wave of darts. Or is it? I have a theory on this. I'm going to tell you at the end. But this is something I thought I wanted to look into. Is this really the case? Is darts better than it's ever been? Or is it kind of a bit lazy in its presentation? Because actually, when we look at darts, and I think back over the last sort of 10 years, every year we're told the same. This is the best world match play you've ever seen. This is the best world championship you've ever seen. Q School's the hardest Q School it's ever been. Is that really the case? Let's take a look at some evidence and some actual facts and figures and numbers. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to FDI and Feb's data for providing me with some stats and statistics. Go give them a follow. They post regularly some very useful information and entertaining information as well. It's not just numbers, it's how the numbers are presented that makes it entertaining, and these guys nail it. Go give them a follow. First of all, let's take a look at this. This is where I think this story comes from. Now, what you're seeing here is the seeds over the years that have been eliminated. As you can see, 2025, there's quite a bit of red in there. Record number of seeds going out, 14 of the 32 at the last 64 stage. Now, what's interesting for me is the pattern. So when we look at the lower seeds have never really dominated. You'll see number 24 has actually got a worse than 50-50% record, the poison chalice of the number 24 seed. But the majority of seeds in the lower end are sort of 55-60 sort of percent of going through. So it's not like they're right up at the very, very top like the top seeds are, sort of 90 plus. Now, what's interesting for me is over the years, the top seeds have become a little bit more vulnerable. Take a look at 2018 to 2010. Not a single seed in that sort of top 5 ever got eliminated. The top 5 was so much stronger than everybody else back then, when now look at it, quite a lot of red appearing. So there's an interesting pattern emerging there that maybe is going to direct our story and maybe take a little look at, are we looking here at the top players dropping the levels rather than everything just accelerating? So there's the first little thing we're going to dig into. And just as a sort of prequel to that, we're going to take a look at the averages in the first couple of rounds here. The last 96, you can see that it's ran for 7 years, that round of 96 players, and this year's tournament is ranked 4 out of those 7 in regards to an average. Now, there's not much between the averages at all, but there's certainly no evidence there to suggest that that first round is what we're being told, which is, before there would be absolute guarantees and now there's none, and all, because the level looks pretty much exactly the same. If anything, it's below par because it's below that middle range. Above average though for the last 64, the 6th best out of the 20 incarnations of the last 64 rounds. And again, when we look back to those sort of early days, we're sort of talking 2006 sort of to 2012-ish, where we sort of had quite a differential in regards to the stats and the averages for the players. But what about the last 32? Let's take a look at that. When we look at the last 6 years, so we're going to go back to 2020. 95, 42, 95. Only one average since 2020 has been lower than the average of the round at the moment of which we're seeing. So again, I'm finding it hard to back up that claim that darts is in a position where it's better than it's ever been, certainly over the last years. Now, when we cast back even further, take a look at the overall average for this round, 91.06 over all the years. That's because many years ago, when we start going back again to sort of 2008, 2000s, that's where the level is different. So when we're saying this is better than last year or better than 2020, actually 2020 and certainly 2017, they seem better years than what we're seeing now, which is kind of going to back up my theory that I'm going to tell you at the end of this video. So yes, when we've been told the story that actually it's better than it used to be, it is, but we're talking a long way back rather than over more recent times, year on year, statistically. Let's keep digging. And when you dig here, this is the one I think tells you the story. So here you'll have the seasonal averages from 2016 to 2024. Now, when I put this out on X on Twitter to ask for opinions, a lot of people said 2017 was the best year. Certainly, when you look at the very peak, when you look at the peak of the players and the abilities, that number one position, 2017 was the highest. Now, what you've got here, your graph, different colours depending on the ranking position. We're looking at those key positions, 1, 4, 8, 16, 32 and 64. And as you can actually see here, and what really highlights it is when we look at a linear line, is that the very top level of the sport has actually declined over years. In the last sort of year or so, Luke Humphries and Luke Little are boosting that back up again. But the top end of the sport has actually declined over years. That sort of number 4 position has sort of stayed the same. The sort of 8 position has stayed the same, where there's been improvement for players in position 16, players in position 32, and a very slight improvement as well for players around the 64 position. Now, this is what it relates to in terms of numbers, and as you can see, when we highlight those numbers and see where the best years was, we're again looking around 2017 for the very top sort of elitism of the sport. But then we're looking further down, the development and the sort of growth started around about 2020, and then this year we've got a couple of improvements. So a bit of a scattering in regards to where the best year was depending on the person's ranking. So when we look at numbers, data, facts and figures, what we're getting here is we're getting nothing to back up the claim that darts has improved year on year. I think. But now we look at it and go, well, Richie Edhouse won. We had a player outside the top 32 reach a final. We had a player outside the top 32 reach a semi-final. We had Andrew Gilding win the UK Open. We had Mike Dedeker win the World Grand Prix. All these different stories, and you go, well, that wouldn't have happened before. No, it wouldn't. But why wouldn't it have happened before? Did it not happen before because the players there wasn't good enough? Or did it not happen there because the players at the top was just that much better? I think we're getting a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. The players at the bottom have improved slightly, where the players at the top have decreased. They've become more vulnerable. And we can see that when we look at the World Championship Seas. It was never been beaten, sort of positions 1 to 5. And now we're getting a lot of the higher ranked seeds get beaten. So why is this? Is it because, like we say, the standard's so much better now? I think what we've got as well now is we've got a familiarity and a exposure, and I think that's what we're seeing now. In the past, the numbers suggest that this tournament was ran the same. The standard was the same in 2020, in 2019, in 2018. So we're comparing the same ability. But why does it feel? Why do we get to say, oh, this is better than ever? I think it's exposure. Channels like this where I'll come on and tell you about the players so you know about them. Things like the Modus Super Series that allows you to see international players on a regular basis, the best players in the world without a tour card, to the point you become very familiar with them. You know, the likes of Jim Long, who played this year, the likes of Wesley Plazier, you know, these sort of players you become very familiar with, and you get to see the levels at which they can reach. Not only that, we get to see them now play on things like the Challenge Tour, things like Darts Connect. You become very familiar with who's playing well. There is no secrets in darts no more. Someone comes through, you know about it, because the averages and the results are there to be seen. Same on the Pro Tour. 30 times a year, 34 times next year, we're going to see them in battles, in their averages. And with that, we've got 14 European tours. Players, we get to see them on a regular basis. We get to see those home nation qualifiers. We've got the World Series. Players getting more familiar now with stages. You've got the UK Open as well. So I think what we've got here is not maybe so much an improvement so much in the levels where you go, well, actually, this player, like you could name 10 players on the Challenge Tour who would quite easily fit into this year's World Championships. But with that, then doesn't that become, you're familiar with the names, you're familiar with those people, and that's my theory. I think darts is becoming more familiar with the player to the fact of, when you look through those early rounds, before you'd dismiss people, and you'd go, I don't think he's going to win, never really heard of him, I don't know, yes, he's played all right in his events, but can he do it against the big boys? Well, he plays against the big boys regularly now. We see him in these situations. So, correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know your theory, but I think the standard is not better. I think, if anything, the very top of it, as the number suggests, is a little bit worse. And I think what we've got here is a familiarity. I think that's what's trying to be explained to us, that we are very familiar with these players. The World Matchplay comes around, you know all 32 players. You've seen them all. where before you'd get a couple of players, maybe I hadn't seen him before, what's he capable of? So I think that story's gone, and with that I think we'd sort of misconceiving it a little bit. But let me know what you think. Am I onto something, or am I talking a load of gobbledygook? I'm sure you'll let me know either way round down in the comment section. Hit a like if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to share these guys if you're interested in all your stats information and darts related content, everything you need right here on Edgar TV. Catch you soon.